We're pleased to have on set Tom Calter, who is the town administrator for the town of Kingston, for Town Talk. Welcome.
Happy New Year, Jules.
Happy New Year. Lots to go on in Kingston.
Kingston's a happening place.
And we're talking about its budget season. So, first of all, I read a couple stats that I got to confirm with you. Your budget is only going up 0.28%.
That's correct.
That's less than 1%?
That's correct.
That's a third of a percent?
Yes. We
Okay.
submitted our budget 3 weeks ago to the Board of Selectmen, which was the result of a long internal process with department heads. And a combination of managing our costs and reducing our debt, paying off certain large interest rate debts, have allowed us to submit a budget that is 1/3 of 1%.
And it is an increase. What did you pay off?
We paid off the Davis property that we purchased for $750,000 in this year's budget. We also made our last payment to the schools, construction of schools, which
Wonderful.
will reduce our debt expense about $1.5 million. Wow. So it's not a typical year. You don't often have a budget request where you're starting out before anybody makes any cuts at 1/3 of 1%.
Yeah.
But things are going very well financially in Kingston, and I hope we can talk more about how that manifests itself later on.
Right. Well, let's talk about the budget.
Okay.
One thing that I noticed is your percentage. The schools always in every town are a big part. They're 51.5% of your budget.
That's right.
Speak to that.
We have a $50 million budget. Approximately half of it is for schools and half of it is for the town. So when we talk about town services, we're not talking about $50 million. We're talking about $25 million. Based upon our estimates as to what this year's budget will be at the schools, they haven't finished their budget yet.
Okay.
So we've had to make an estimate and a calculation. They'll be at about 51.5% of the total budget, and the rest of the town will be about 48.5% of the total budget. And so we don't have as much to work with and to polish and refine as most people think we have. We have no control over the school budget. The school committee has control over the school budget. We give them guidance. We make recommendations. We make requests. But at the end of the day, the school committee and the superintendent present their budget to town meeting.
Now, let me just ask you for schools in general.
Yeah.
When you say the school committee, they're the ones who decide on the budget. Do they have a final say, but then it has to go to town meeting to be approved?
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah, of
So
course.
that includes not only the buildings, but all salaries, benefits, every ancillary possibility that has to do with, goes into the school budget.
All inclusive.
Okay.
Including their capital budget.
And is it true in all towns that the school budgets are basically handled by the school department and the school committee?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's fascinating. People talk both favorably and unfavorably about the power of town meeting. At the end of the day, and there are certain people that say, well, only 150 people go to town meetings, so how can that represent the town? Well, at the end of the day, our bylaw says town meeting is the ultimate arbitrator of all budget items.
Right.
So if 150 people accept any of our recommendations, then that becomes the law.
That's right. So be it.
So be it.
Right.
And so the schools, I was on the school committee, and I support the autonomy that they have. The schools do the best they can at developing the tightest budget possible without minimizing services, which in this case is educating our children.
Right.
And they bring it forth to town meeting, and town meeting is typically very supportive of Kingston schools. I represented 6 towns for a long time, and I go to meetings of other town managers. Kingston schools are so highly regarded, and that's part of the reason our real estate values are going up so quickly.
I was just going to ask you that question, right? It really is, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you have a great school system, you tend to have a great reputation in your town, and your town property values seem to be higher.
It's the good news and it's the bad news.
Yeah, exactly.
As property values go up, their taxes go up.
Right.
As property values go up, their equity goes up.
Right.
And that's not something I, as a town administrator, have any control over.
Exactly. Talk to me about the process of budgeting.
Sure.
And let's do your operational budget and then your capital budget.
Okay, sure. Our fiscal year begins on July 1st. By September 1st of every year, we begin the operating budget for the following year.
Wow.
So it's a 10-month process.
Yeah. You don't get a break.
Well, that's okay. I
Yeah.
like budgeting.
Yeah.
So it begins with myself and our CFO meeting with every department head one-on-one.
Yep.
We review their existing current budget, and we look at how they're doing 2-3 months into the fiscal year. And we brainstorm on ways that we can do more with less, just like we all do in our personal
At home.
lives.
Yep.
And you do that through consolidation, through efficiencies, through economies of scale, all of the things that aren't typically recognized in municipal government, but are commonplace in the private sector, which is where I came from.
Right.
And it's an edifying process in that the department heads are empowered to make very strong decisions and or recommendations on change that previously may have been considered way outside the box. And we encourage that outside the box thinking.
Because they know better
Exactly
than
right.
anyone. It's their departments.
When I met with the finance department, paying off the Davis property, which carried a unusually high interest rate,
Yeah.
within our operating budget this year, saved us $19,000.
Yeah, why wouldn't you do that?
Exactly right. Saved us $19,000. So we have baked in paying off the Davis property into this budget and paying off the $19,000 and save the interest expense, just like you would do in your home.
Right.
You would, if you had cash, you got a bonus at work, and you had surplus cash, you'd pay off a credit card that had a high interest rate.
Yeah.
We do the
Or
same
an
thing.
equity
in
line,
municipal-
yeah,
or an equity line.
absolutely, yeah.
And so we start that process early, whether it be with health or highways or conservation or selectmen or it doesn't matter, recreation. And we think way outside the box, at least 2, in some cases 3 meetings with department heads.
Yep.
And we end up with a draft.
Yep.
And when that draft is done, I circle back with each department head to make sure that this is what they want to go forth with.
Yep.
And then the CFO and I compile the whole budget.
Yep.
In early November, we presented to the Board of Selectmen with our initiatives, which I've laid a bunch of them out here, that summarize key components in executive summary. The board votes it. In this particular case, they propose a single amendment to add some money for preservation of conservation land.
Yeah.
And accepted the rest of the budget.
Okay.
So here we are in the first week of January.
Yeah.
And we've got meetings scheduled throughout the winter with the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee is a very important advisory committee that goes through every line item. And
So up until this point, the Finance Committee was not involved with this?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
The departments were involved with it?
it's the selectmen's budget.
Okay.
We do the budget.
And let me just interrupt one other thing while I was thinking of it. For each department, is there also a contingency fund, a what-if fund?
No
that you-
contingency
Okay, there's
funds.
no contingency.
No.
So you don't, what about the unexpected? How do you do that?
The town has an emergency fund
okay.
that is managed by the Finance Committee.
Okay.
So if there is a unforeseen emergency in the year,
Yeah.
the department head, along with myself and the CFO, will go to the Finance Committee, present the cost of responding to the emergency,
Okay.
and ask for a
Okay.
deposit. There's also free cash, where that's the money that's left over after you do your budget.
Yep.
And so let's say there's $2 million of free cash. We use it for capital expenses,
Okay.
which we'll talk about in a minute.
Okay.
The tighter we manage our budget, the more free cash we
Absolutely.
have at the end of the year.
Absolutely.
And we've been very solid with respect to free cash.
So I interrupted you. So you now that you have the selectmen's budget that has been approved, they made one amendment. They can make as many as they want. They can make as many suggestions as they want. Then you'd have to go back and massage the budget based on what they have given you.
Of course, they could throw the budget out and
Okay,
say no.
start over again?
And you know, I communicate with the selectmen throughout the budget process, and I let them know that there are certain strategic directions we're moving in.
Yep.
And in this year, the strategic direction the advisory committee approved was we want an austere budget. We want to give our citizens tax relief.
Yep.
We'll talk about it in a minute. We've lowered the tax rate pretty significantly this past year.
Right.
And we want to lower it next year as well. And so we're focusing on preserving services with the most austere budget we
Yep.
can
Most
produce.
efficient, yep.
And we produced that budget.
Okay.
And again, with one minor amendment,
Yeah.
they've signed off on
Yep.
it. So now each department head over the next several months will go before the full finance committee and present their budget. And the Finance Committee does an excellent job of reviewing our work
Yep.
so that the deliberative process is very honest. It's very substantive.
Yeah.
It's a great discussion. It's another level of discussion that I appreciate because that's how you get to a great budget.
Yep.
And led by Carl Pike, who's done a wonderful job. We go through every department head, every line item of
Yep.
every budget. They ask very challenging questions. We're expected to give substantive answers, and at the end of the day, we hope to reach consensus on the budget.
Does that process often have a little give and take, a little negotiation?
Oh, quite a bit.
Okay.
Sure.
So the budget you present very rarely is the actual budget you end up with at town meeting.
Neither the Finance Committee or the Selectmen have cornered the market on great ideas.
Okay.
So the Selectmen have guided me to work very closely with the FinCom to find the common denominator that results in a single budget. We don't want to go to town meeting with two budgets.
No, of course you don't.
I mean, if we reach an impasse, then we do that. We let the citizens of Kingston at town meeting
Decide.
Be the deciding
Yep.
force behind a consensus budget. But we see it as our responsibility to reach agreement, and we get to that point almost always.
That's great. What about your capital? What do you have going on for capital this year?
Capital planning, it's a 5-year capital plan that we've developed, and Vice Chairman Elaine Fiore has done a masterful job over almost a decade of initiating this process. It used to be just the capital plan for this year. We've got a 5-year,
Which makes sense.
a revolving, evolving 5-year plan.
Yeah.
So tomorrow evening, we're in the first week of January. I've coordinated a joint meeting of the Board of Selectmen, the Capital Planning Committee, it's their purview, and the Finance Committee to all sit in a joint session. And each department head, there's 5 of them, have capital items for this fiscal year, fiscal 21.
Yep.
They will present those requests. I'll be there to support them. Each of the boards, the Finance Committee, the Board of Selectmen, and the Capital Planning Committee will ask questions.
Sure.
And each of those committees will vote on whether they support favorable action or unfavorable
Yep.
action. And they've received a book 2 weeks ago with the 5-year plan, but with all the backup and the detail, including quotes,
Yeah.
proposals.
Everything.
Everything.
Everything they need.
For the request for
Yep.
tomorrow night.
Yep. That's
So-
great.
And so that's a process that will begin and end
Yep.
tomorrow evening. A lot of work went into it.
Sure.
But because we do a lot of work up front, it allows those 3 committees to make very informed decisions. And by the way, they're also encouraged, and many of them take advantage of this, when they know 2 weeks ago what the capital request is, they go and they see the fire chief. They go and see the police
Yes.
chief. They go to talk to the IT director on what their requests are, and they're encouraged to get even a
sure.
deeper understanding. The more people we can get involved, the better the
Right.
process and the better the outcome.
Right. And the more, I think like you said, 150 people show up to town meeting to vote, which is, how many residents do you have that are
13,000.
that can vote?
13,000?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same in a lot of towns.
It is.
And knowledge is power, and correct knowledge is the best power.
Sure is.
And like you say, if you get involved and you watch the meetings and you do your research, there's no reason why. Because I don't think any town comes up with a budget that's just like, hey, let's try this. You know, you do something. You clearly want to be efficient. You clearly want to serve your citizens in the best way that they can.
Maintain or improve services at a lower cost.
Right.
That's our goal. And, so I'd like to talk for a minute about, people say, well, wait a minute, if you've got such a tight budget, why are my taxes going up?
Right.
So Kingston is recognized as a community on the move throughout the South Shore. When you're moving into a community, what are you looking at? What is the school system?
Right.
How does it rate? Well,
Yep.
we do very well. What are the recreation programs for our youth? Between Opachinski Field and our recreation department, we rank up there pretty high. How about the budget? How is it managed? Well, our tax rate per thousand was reduced this year for the first time.
Right, it's going down to $16.28 per thousand from
Right.
$16.46 per thousand.
Exactly right.
But your
So
value
people
goes
say,
up.
well, if your tax rate's going down,
Yeah.
how can our tax
Yeah.
bill go up? Well, that happens because things are viewed across the South Shore as very positive in Kingston. So people who are selling their houses in Kingston are flipping them very quickly at asking or above asking price,
Right.
because this is a desirable place to come. So when the tax rate when the taxes are assessed for the following year, you'll look at comparable homes that sold, and that's how I understand from the assessors department,
Yep.
that's how their
Right.
tax bill is determined.
right.
And so although one may be paying more money in their tax bill, their equity actually
Yeah, their house is worth so much more.
worth a lot
right,
more money.
Which is great. Okay, so we're out of time. This was great. When is town meeting?
Oh, was that a stumper? I don't have the date off the top of my head.
Is it in May?
Early May,
Yeah,
yes.
in early May you have town
Yes,
meeting.
I'm
So
sorry.
you still have 4 months to massage everything and inform people of what's going on.
Well, I know we're out of time, but so very quickly, there will be public forums on every article for town meeting, including the budget.
Great.
So I encourage people to come. There are those that vote no on every single article, and that's their prerogative.
Mm-hmm.
But they're also invited to come in at any time they want and get a private viewing of the budget or anything else. They've never availed themselves of that, but I want to continue to renew that invitation should they
It's
avail
always
themselves.
open. Your
Yes.
door is open. Excellent. All right, well, Tom Calter, thank you so much.
Julie, thank you,
And we'll see you next time.
and Happy New Year.
Okay, Happy New Year.